Today, I'll be talking about the immune system and how it affects physiology. And when I say physiology, I mean how the whole body actually works together as one system. We usually think of immunity as something that only fights infections, but in reality, it is active all the time. It is constantly interacting with organs, shaping how the brain, metabolism, and other systems behave. So, the main idea here is simple. The immune system is not separate from the body, it is deeply integrated into it. And now, let's begin by understanding it as a network that connects the whole body. So, first, let's break this down by looking at the immune system as an integrated network across the body. Thus, the immune system is spread throughout the entire body. It is not located in a single organ, it is distributed across tissues and the circulation. And you can see in the figure that immune cells are constantly interacting with tissues, especially in the gut and lungs, where immune surveillance is ongoing all the time. The immune system also helps maintain balance in the body, so it's not just reacting to threats, it is actively regulating normal physiological conditions. And this happens through signaling molecules and immune cell movement. This figure shows how cells interact through chemical signals. Now let's explore the key immune cells and molecules that drive this signaling system. If you look at the figure here, the innate immune system is shown as the first line of defense. For example, physical barriers like the skin and mucus, along with rapid immune cell responses, act immediately when pathogens enter through the body. The next immune defense mechanism is adaptive immunity, a specialized immune response that develops more slowly but targets specific pathogens with high precision. For example, B cells produce antibodies that recognize and bind to a particular pathogen. You can also see in the figure that cytokines act as communication links. They carry messages between immune cells and to other organs. For example, interleukin 1 signals the brain to induce fever. And finally, immune memory is shown as a feedback loop in the diagram. So the body responds faster the second time it encounters the same pathogen. For example, after vaccination, the immune system can recognize and respond to the same pathogen upon subsequent exposure. Now, once these signals are released, they start affecting the whole body. If you look at the figure, cytokines are shown reaching the brain. That's why people often feel brain fog during illness, because inflammatory signals can interrupt normal brain signaling and neural activity. You can also see the hypothalamus region participated in temperature control. That's how fever is triggered during infection, where cytokines signal the hypothalamus to raise the set point of body temperature. The system also shows energy shifting toward immune activity, which is why muscle can feel weak as energy is redirected away from normal muscle function. This is the way of body to conserve energy for recovery. So overall, the diagram shows inflammation spreading across various organs. It is not just local, it becomes systemic. Now, this system becomes even more complex when we connect it with nerves and hormones. If you look at the figure, the vagus nerve connects the brain to immune organs. For example, gut inflammation can send signals directly to the brain through vagal sensory fibers. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis in the diagram shows how stress controls immune activity. So, stress hormones like cortisol directly influence immunity. When cortisol levels rise during stress, they can reduce inflammation and slow down certain immune responses to help keep the body balanced. Hormones also affect immune cells. For example, during stress, immune activity is temporarily adjusted. This helps the body focus its energy on handling the stressful situation first, while briefly lowering some normal immune functions. And importantly, the arrows go both ways. So the immune system also sends signals back to the brain. For example, during infection, immune molecules can signal to the brain to trigger responses like fever, tiredness, or loss of appetite. Now, when all these systems interact, they strongly affect disease and organ function. If you look at the figure, chronic inflammation is shown affecting multiple organs. For example, joints and blood vessels are common targets. Over time, ongoing inflammation can damage tissues and increase the risk of diseases such as arthritis and cardiovascular problems. You can see connections to the heart and metabolic organs in the diagram. For example, inflammation can affect insulin response and blood flow. This means long-term inflammation may contribute to conditions like high blood pressure and heart disease. In the figure, immune cells are shown attacking healthy tissue that represents autoimmune diseases such as arthritis. In these conditions, the immune system mistakenly treats the cells of its own body as harmful and starts causing inflammation and tissue damage. So, when you look at the full diagram, everything becomes dysregulated. Multiple systems lose balance at the same time. That's why chronic inflammation can affect the whole body, affecting immunity, hormones, metabolism, and even brain function together. So, finally, let's look at what we still do not fully understand. Each organ can show specific immune behavior, but the exact mechanisms behind these variations are still unclear. Researchers are trying to understand why immune responses become harmful in some tissues while remaining protective in others. The inflammation can persist over time in chronic disease, but why it stays active for so long is still not fully understood. Broken pathways can be seen between the brain and the immune system. These signaling pathways are still being mapped by research. And finally, the systems appear highly interconnected but also fragmented. We still do not have a single unified model that clearly explains how all these immune, hormonal, metabolic, and neural pathways work together in chronic disease. So, overall, the immune system is not just defense, it is a central regulator of physiology across the entire body. For those interested in learning more about this topic, I suggest you to read the cited article for further details. Thank you for listening.